Hello, boys and girls. This is, I don't know. Do you know who your name is? Okay, I'm gonna stop being creepy and cut to the chase. So, what I'm gonna about is anarcho-capitalism, specifically about how its judicial system is pretty bad, at least according to my tastes. Now, remember, I'm not a statist. Well, whatever. Remember, I'm not a statist, and I do not support the liberal system of judicial, choosing. So, anarcho-capitalism is a system in which the government is abolished and all power is given to the private sector. Now, there's already problems with this, but the main problem with the judicial system is one very specific, very destructive problem. Now, if you hand over all of the services of a state and and give it to the private sector, which, mind you, is all about greed and making the biggest buck at the fastest rate, at the cheapest way, and also with the minority of interests, bad things are gonna happen. Now, what happens is that now that all the shackles of the company is destroyed, what's gonna happen is there's going to be a lot of corruption, or not. I mean, that's supposed to be in the government, right? But there is none anymore. It's only the private sector, I guess. So what happens is that they continue doing this thing, which is really horrible. And by horrible, I mean it can kill people, it can enslave them. And I know that if they are doing bad practices, it's going to drive them out of business. But what about Walmart? What about McDonald's? What about all that stuff? Those guys do treat their workers terribly. Their ethics are horrible. And their workers get low wages. Does that stop people from coming to them? No. Now, I can at least somewhat agree that the government is kind of intertwined with them, but that's all the more reason to eliminate the private sector and the government, not just the government. I mean, if the government is the root of all evil and there's something intertwined with it, what do? It's already corrupted beyond belief and already can corrupt in a few years. If capitalism is too juicy of a thing to stay without a state. That's why we resulted with a cronyist society anyways. It's because the state, do you really expect the state and the private sector to stay separated? No. Even if you take the state away, what happens? Someone in there is going to be the state. And they're going to do the same thing, violating the non-aggression policy, violating people's human rights. Now, what would happen? Well, of course, people would fight back, with all the guns that you all distributed equally. But wait, you have to buy guns. They're probably going to be expensive, and the majority of people are going to have a very low amount of money, even though all the taxes are gone now. But does that really matter? In our system, what happens is that people get taxed according to their amount of money, which means that the poor people, even if their taxes are not taken away, it won't make that much of a difference because it's already small. Now, it's always the best for the rich people who get millions, possibly even billions of dollars from taxes taking them away, and all of that capital is coming back to them. But nonetheless, I'm trying to talk about the judicial system. Sorry about that tangent. Just really shows how I don't like this system. But what happens is that they say that these things have that bad practices by the corporations can either go one of two one of two ways, or both sometimes. They will get destroyed in the market, which I literally just didn't unproved, and they will get prosecuted by a private government, in which I say that's pretty retarded. Because what happens is that private judges can be bribed, and relatively easily, because there's no one watching your every move. Remember, prisons are kind of one of the only reasons, and you call them tyranny. Just a small reason why anarcho-capitalism is kind of, being a little hypocritical. But nonetheless, even if there are prisons, what happens? You're still under the watchful eye, and if with civil offenses, like how usually companies go, they always have the time to have someone bribe the judge, bribe the guards, or do whatever. As well as private police, they can also be bribed. But the same thing goes with our system, the liberal system. Ugh. Now, don't think that I'm a statist by any means. No, I despise the state and the capitalist system. I'm what's called a social anarchist. But nonetheless, the thing is that these guys are going to make money. They're going to sell their position for money. And if I was able to classify it, I would call that capital. So proving Marx once again. They're selling their capital for an unruly amount of money, usually. I mean, if you're a company, you're willing to pay millions to get out of $1 million lawsuit. But, there can be a lot more picked apart. So, in summary, the market doesn't really matter, and it won't always destroy the unethical practices. I mean, sometimes it can happen, but things can still be manipulated through propaganda and all of that stuff. And still, there aren't any laws dictating them from putting in false advertising. So another thing is that they will get prosecuted through private courts. But still, private courts can easily be manipulated. They can be bribed. And usually, since companies go through civil cases, like that case where an old lady got a third-degree burn from a really hot coffee, they could always bribe the judges within a private court. Because, and this is the main reason why, the court is run by a sector which is legitimately directed just so the individual profits the most, and not a collective of individuals, in which dare I say communism or anarcho-communism can really fix. But that was all I was gonna say. Bye-bye.